Welcome to the Calibre cast. We are here today continuing our conversation about real stories in the AEC industry, and I'm excited today to bring some structural perspective to the conversation. So today we're here with Tanner Diaz. Tanner, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Calibre?
Yeah, I'm Tanner Diaz. I'm a structural engineer, a project manager in the structural department for Calibre. I'm a licensed structural engineer in California, and I'm a PE licensed structural in the state of Utah and Colorado.
Awesome. So I found that many engineers are driven by knowing that the work that they do has real world impact. So can you think of a project or a moment in your career where you felt like your work made a real difference?
Yeah, I definitely like to talk about a specific project that really stood out for me. It was a new elementary school campus that consisted of about eight buildings that I worked on. And I think what was special about this project was the location of the school was going to be in a very low income neighborhood. So from the beginning, we knew how important that building was going to be for the community. Their current school was very much outdated, and there was not enough classroom or building space to meet the growing student population in that area. And it just didn't feel the same to just another project because it was a place where these kids, were going to learn. But ultimately, I think it was a safe space for them in the environment that they were in. And so this school project, the challenge was the budget. They were given a specific amount of money from the state in the form of a bond. And just knowing that these maybe more underprivileged kids, this was going to be a new school for them. Uh, we needed to stay within budget, but also keep, everything as safe as possible as it is a school for young kids. So definitely that was one of the projects where I felt like, okay, what you're doing here, how you handle the structural design, how you handle just the general engineering of the project, not to overcomplicate things or drive up your construction costs, your budget. It has super direct, real world consequences on people.
Yeah, there's something about serving kids that makes things feel really real. Have you had the opportunity to go back and drive by or
Yes, probably a year or so after the full construction was done, I was able to see it. And although I'm designing the structure and you don't really want to see any of that when it's done because it's all finished off, I was able to help during construction, and that was a pretty long process just with it being an entire school campus. Um, but even, letting the contractor, giving them advice on your engineering design and different aspects, keeping that budget down, making sure it's still safe, making sure the contractor is following what you're doing. That was cool to see throughout that project. I think when I did see that, school fully constructed, seeing all the kids, I was there at a time when I don't know if it was just half the school, but it seemed like a lot of kids were out for recess. Just kind of actually seeing them enjoy the space. It's not something that I really even think about when it's a regular project. Like, oh, maybe it's an office building. Adults are just gonna go in there, work on their computers, and so
Right.
I thought that was just eye opening to see that in person and see the kids.
Yeah, how wonderful. You're right. It's not quite the same as like, oh, I'm designing this building where people are going to sit at their computers.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see them interact and enjoy the space.
Yep. I definitely felt that way. So
That's great. Well, I learned a lot about you as we worked together to provide our in-house assertiveness training. And I really related to your growth from your younger self to your growing leadership role today. And when you reflect on your journey across your career, what advice would you give to your younger self or to an engineer just graduating and entering the field?
yeah, I think there are a few things I would say to someone new to our field. Uh, and even I would take this advice, now if I was just beginning my career, I'd probably tell my younger self to relax a little and not stress about knowing everything right away, like right out of school. I feel like in college, stuff is thrown at you so quickly. you learn a million things in, just a short 4 or 5 years that you're at school. But then when you start out in the real world, it's your first job. It's easy to feel like you're behind, or that everyone you're working with, or even everyone in the field, just has so much more knowledge than you. But that's kind of how it's supposed to be, I think. And if I could have just known that, relaxed a little, not stressed, not everyone is going to expect you to have all the answers. I think everyone has been in that same boat when they started. And hopefully, your superiors, your mentors, people are going to understand that. And I think they will understand that, knowing you're a new hire, you're just a new graduate. And so I learned from an early mentor to try to take things as far as you can, get feedback on that. You're going to make mistakes. And the best thing you can do is just stay curious, ask questions, and you're going to learn from making those mistakes. And I really do feel like, looking back on that first year or two of my career, um, I made mistakes, but it definitely pushed me along quicker, and it got me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like the idea of encouraging people to ask questions and letting people know that it's okay not to know everything. I think there's something about going into the technical field where you think you're supposed to know, right? Because you have this technical degree and
Yep.
you've done the research in advance or whatever. But it's okay to say, "Hey, I don't know. Let me get back to you, or let me do some extra calcs, or whatever it is." It's okay to say, "I don't know."
Yeah, and I think just your role being an engineer, it's people go to you to ask these questions. They want to hear answers. They want them quickly. They kind of want to hear the answer, that they want to hear. And so I think relaxing, just knowing that you're going to learn so much in those first few years, it's going to kind of ease the tension, and just, I think it's going to have a more positive effect on, your growth in those first few years. And I think you bring up a good point. I think, like, communication is huge, and whether it's between colleagues, within your company, whether it's between other disciplines, um, I think you can be the best technical person, like, right out of school, or you can go to the greatest school. But if you can't explain those ideas clearly to people, they're maybe not going to listen to you, or they're not going to know that you're the smartest in the room. And so I think building those soft skills early, that's going to make a huge difference. And I think communication is never going to go away. And so even now, I'm more than 10 years, almost 12 years in, I'm always trying to improve those skills. And I think I reap the benefits the more I put work into those soft skills. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like the point you made about we do live in this really sort of pressurized environment, and it feels like everything needs to happen now or yesterday. And that can make us feel like we have to answer something just when somebody asks it, but we don't always know the answer when somebody asks a question or when somebody needs something. And even though we might feel that pressure coming externally, it's important to, like you said, relax internally and realize that we need to find time to find the right answer as opposed to giving way to that pressured feeling.
yeah, and I think if I would have known that earlier in my career, I think it would have helped me in some of those situations when I'm asked a question that, I pretty quickly know, okay, I maybe don't know this, or I haven't researched this topic enough, or just coming up with strategies to, help myself in those situations and kind of ease the stress, of that situation. And so that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. So, lastly, I'd like to spend some time thinking through what drives you and your values. How do you connect your values to your work as an engineer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, just my natural personality, it's just an honest person. I felt like definitely not a rule breaker. I tried to always follow the rules, and kind of be, the good student in class, and all that. And so I feel like, just naturally coming in, putting myself in an engineering role, or in the engineering position, honesty and integrity are important values for me, and I think I carry those into this profession. I feel like, as engineers, we make decisions that affect people's safety and quality of life, obviously. So I try to approach every project with that in mind. And I think it's kind of funny. An old mentor that I had when I was first starting, not to scare anyone, but he would say, you're actually designing something that can kill people. And so I
My
think
gosh.
um, just there's been times in my career where, maybe you do make a mistake, and being honest about that, before something gets built rather than maybe trying to hide it and make yourself look good. I've run into some situations where, yeah, like maybe you make a mistake, but it's early on, you let somebody know, or you fix that mistake. You don't want to be ashamed of yourself. Just it's going to be so much better for you in the long run. And so I think that sort of honesty and integrity um, is always going to help you in a situation like that. I also feel like, to go back to the example on the project for the new school in that lower income area, I think equity is important, and I feel like that's a value to me, that I think good design shouldn't just be, like a really nice project for someone that has a huge budget, or it's for a rich person. It's like, even these other in these other situations, you should be trying to strive for that same standard of care for everybody. And so whenever I can, I try to push for practical, like affordable engineering solutions that still deliver the quality and safety. So I, I know the consequences of having a big mistake, and so I think just honesty, integrity definitely are very important to me, and I try to keep those values in my practice as well.
Yeah, I can see that, and I can see that shining through in just how you carry yourself and your career as well. I'm curious because you are this sort of calm person, and you talked about that mentor who said, you're doing something that if it fails, it can kill somebody. And I imagine that would make me feel a lot of pressure. So I'm just curious, how do you, as a person, calm yourself internally when you're feeling those moments of pressure?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it is kind of high stakes, but I think I draw back on, yeah, all those lessons I learned, and whether it's in school or in those first few years, like the fundamentals, I like to call them. As long as you stick to the fundamentals, and you have kind of your quality assurance, your QA/QC, we call it, you're gonna have all these checks and balances where big problems, catastrophic things, I don't know, those are in the back of my mind now, because I know there's all these safeguards, and I've learned the fundamentals. I know what I need to look for on certain projects. So I think if that's your base, is being confident, sticking to the fundamentals, you shouldn't have, is a building gonna collapse on me? Because, that's not in the forefront of my head. So I think just sticking to that, and looking ahead rather than, maybe what could happen, it's gonna keep your design and everything in a safe spot, and it's gonna be a quality design.
Yeah, that's great advice. Ground yourself in the fundamentals because that's where
I like that.
everything starts. That's
Yep.
great advice. Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything that you want to say to wrap up our time today?
Not particularly. I appreciate the platform, and I think it's great getting to talk to different engineers, different disciplines within our industry. And so I'm just excited I was able to share some stories from, my career or my past, and just some things that I think about to help me day to day in our industry.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, some takeaways from Tanner here. Find joy in serving the community. It's okay not to know everything. Stay curious and ask questions. Stick to the fundamentals, and my personal favorite, good design serves with equity, honesty, and integrity. All right,
Like
Tanner,
it.
thanks for
Yep.
your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.